Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott. I've reviewed about 10 Bluetti products at this point, along with a host of other power stations from other brands. Most of them follow a similar pattern. There's some kind of marketing hook that they're going after, some kind of feature or gimmick that they're trying to sell you on, and then kind of the basic performance of the unit is maybe secondary in the marketing. The Bluetti Elite 200 V2 really kind of bucks that trend because it has very few marketable features in the sense of having some kind of battery swapping or expansions or some other kind of gimmicky port or calling card like that. But what it does have is serious storage and serious output power. The Elite 200 V2 isn't sexy, but it sure is practical. We're going to dive into the reasons why in today's review. So as noted, this has a tremendous amount of storage capacity. Right inside the box without any kind of expansion or any other kind of gimmick, it has over 2,000, in fact 2,073.6 watt hours of storage. And to put that into perspective, a unit like the AC180T that I reviewed last year with its dual swappable batteries, that's a lot bigger than this. It has a total capacity with the two batteries of 1,433 watt hours. So this has an additional over 600 watt hours of actual storage inside. A unit like the DJI Power 1000 has just 1,024 watt hours, and so literally half the capacity of this particular unit. On top of that, it has a tremendous amount of power output. Of this type of unit, this is the most that I have ever seen from anything that I've tested before. It can continuously put out in a stable fashion 2,600 watts, which is very, very impressive, and it has lifting power of up to 3,900 watts, meaning that it can pretty much power anything. What's more, it is rated for 6,000 recharge cycles. Most of them are around 3,500, maybe 4,000. So rather than giving you 10 years or 11 years of continuous daily charging, this is rated for up to 17 years of use. Obviously pretty impressive there. Now, as it stands here next to me, it may not look compact, but it is relatively compact. And you can see from this comparison of these two other units that I've mentioned that while on the right side you can see the DJI unit, while it has a different shape, it's really not all that much smaller. And then to the left you see the AC180T, and you can see it is tremendously larger than what this unit is. This unit's actually about 40% smaller than the unit that it replaces. It's a V2, remember, second generation. And so the unit that it is replacing, it is about 40% smaller. So obviously that is pretty impressive. To give you an idea of those actual dimensions, this is right under 14 inches wide. It is 9.84 inches deep, and it is 12.74 inches tall. That's 350 by 250 by 323 millimeters in overall dimension. Now, it's not lightweight. It weighs in at 53.4 pounds or a little over 24 kilograms. But again, if you're comparing apples to apples, it is actually lighter than a lot of the units that are in this class, which tend to be over 60 pounds. And so again, that's impressive. On top of that, we have got tremendous power input. We can accept up to 1,800 watts of power flowing into it, and you can do pass-through charging even at that 1,800 watts. And so in other words, yes, you can have power coming into it and power going out of it at the same time. Also, when it comes to your solar input, you can get 1,000 watts of solar input, and it is designed to where you can actually run both AC and solar input. You can get up to 2,400 watts of power input, which obviously is going to recharge things really, really quickly. You can get about an hour of charge if you're doing it that way. Now, it doesn't have any kind of IP rating, which is something that unfortunately seems to be more common than not with these type units. It's something that I will note as a regret here in a moment. It has a 5-year warranty for all the components here. What we don't have is any kind of exterior light. And so if you're looking for a built-in LED light, that is missing here. However, on the positive note, also missing is a power brick. You just have a simple power cord for going in there. And so I love the fact that we have moved away from the power bricks and eliminated those, because those typically actually were also the bottleneck when it came to charging speeds. And once we started going to having just a built-in, power management, we actually ended up being able to unlock much faster charge speeds. It also has a good screen here, nothing super fancy, but Bluetti's displays, which I'm very familiar with at this point, they're nice and bright, they have good amount of information, there's kind of no tricks there, it's easy to read, and so I have no issues with that. You have full percentage readouts for both inputs and outputs in a variety of different capacities, and also you have an ongoing runtime of how much life you would have left with the current draw going into it. All good. On top of that, we have more robust UPS options built into this. It's rated for under 15 milliseconds in terms of the switchover, but what I found interesting is that you have a variety of different, actually a total of 4 different modes you can access through the Bluetti app in terms of how you want the UPS to function. And one of those kind of unique functions you can set it up for is if you happen to have really kind of peak draw in terms of your electrical plan, you could actually phase off onto this during the peak draw and then recharge this during the times when you're off peak and thus reduce some of your electric bills. And so again, kind of a unique, interesting option to have there. It also has, as mentioned already, it does have a Bluetooth app along with Wi-Fi, and so you can remotely control it. And I find that Bluetti's app is really, really great. It's easy to use, very functional, and allows you to both monitor it and then also to tweak settings according to your preferred setup. There is no wireless charging pad on it, but when it comes to the overall ports, we have a pretty straightforward, we have 4 different 120 volt grounded plugs here. They're rated at 21.6 amps. And so again, you have pure sine wave power of 2600 watts continuous flowing through those. I will note that unlike a lot of units that I've tested, all 4 of these plugs are actually 20 amp plugs. And so, and as noted, they're actually over 20 amps. And so that means that you're going to be able to plug just about anything into it without having to worry about tripping it. Also, the fact that they're 20 amp plugs is if for some reason you need to plug in more than 4 things, and so you're using, for example, an extension cord with multiple prongs on it, again, you're not going to be running so much into this, you're likely to trip it. And so great there as well. Nothing special in terms of the DC ports. We have 2 USB-C ports that are rated at 100 watts, 2 USB-A ports that are 5 volts at 3 amps, so 15 watts of power output there. And then of course, we also have your typical DC output, and it's rated at 12 volts and 10 amps of output. And so that's what you might call the cigarette lighter style port there at the front. You do have a grounding connector here at the side, and the input, DC input, like for solar, is the DC 7909, which has become increasingly the common standard. And I love when things are standardized because it means that I'm not having to swap cables with solar panels, and if I'm using multiple devices, I can charge them through the same processes without having to switch things up. So all of that is great. So different tests that I ran, in this case, I actually, because this is so powerful, a lot of times I do a separate test of my electric tea kettle, which can pull up to 1500 watts, and then an 1100 watt blender. In this case, I actually did them both at the same time. And as you can see, with 0 issues. Because one is rated at 1100 and the other is rated at 1500 watts, it falls between the mass capacity here. And so as a byproduct, I could run both of them stable for until the battery ran dead. And so that is fantastic. I've never been able to do that before with any of these units, particularly without having to go into some kind of kind of lift mode or extended power mode. So that was fantastic to be able to do that for the first time. Another thing that I tested for is because a unit like this, strikes me as being quite useful in terms of a power outage. And so let's take a look at how it handles running a refrigerator, for example. It's a bigger unit. I'm wanting to see how it will handle more of a backup. So I've got our basement refrigerator here. And so what I'm going to do is, starting right now, 8:55 a.m., I'm going to plug it into the Bluetti unit instead of AC power. And we're going to see how it works out in terms of the draw of the refrigerator drawing off of this unit, and see how long it's going to last as a backup for an emergency situation. Okay, it's been about 3 hours at this point. According to my research, refrigerators will cycle on every 20 to 30 minutes. I did catch one of those cycles and saw that it was drawing kind of at peak around 125 watts. However, our current status after 3 hours, it is currently 11:55, is that it is sitting at 93%, which tells me that if I were in a backup situation and I was running just the fridge off of that I could get probably around 31, 32 hours before it would exhaust the capacity of the battery. So certainly a very usable amount of time. And so as you can see from that, being able to get, upwards of 30 hours, at least in my test, if I, extrapolate that out, that's going to be obviously very useful to maybe preserve hundreds of dollars worth of groceries and not waste them during a time of some kind of, power outage, power being down. And of course, if you have access to solar, you could extend that even further by, of course, charging this through other means. I tested hooking up the normal things to it. I hooked up, cameras and phones and tablets, other power banks, on and on it goes. Those kind of things hardly phase a unit like this. It has so much battery capacity that it could charge one of those many times over, and so zero issues with that. I did want to test how quickly I could get the recharge times to see if they got up to that, and so via AC I found that I could draw as much as 1804 watts, so slightly exceeding the 1800 watts that it's rated. And what really impressed me is that even in the standard mode where you're not, it's still running extremely quiet and all of those things, I actually could pull right under 1450 watts of continuous draw during that time. I mean, that's fantastic because that exceeds most of what I've seen in the past, even in terms of maximum output in the turbo mode. And so fantastic even on that. And I will note that this runs extremely quiet. Again, because it is just so powerful. It's really not phased by most things you're running through. And even if I was running multiple devices or recharging at a high speed, I never really heard the fan kick on. And when you're running in normal mode, this thing is basically silent. The maximum decibels it's going to put out during a time like that is around 16, which is so quiet. It's like a paper on a page turning. I mean, it is just incredibly quiet. And so again, you're not going to have any issues with that. And the maximum loudest it could ever get is around 50 decibels. And that's with everything running full tilt. Again, it's a very quiet unit. So how about some things that I like? Well, obviously I love the huge capacity and I love the huge power output here. That really is what kind of sets this unit apart. I love the fact that it is noticeably smaller than similarly spec'd units. Obviously, I mean, having a small footprint is great, and I look forward to future technology where we can shrink this even further. And but this is a great step in the right direction. I mean, dropping 40% over the previous generation, that's a huge step in the right direction. And if we can do it again in the next generation, well, before long, we're going to have units this powerful in the form factor of what like the 700 watt hour units used to be. And so that is fantastic. It also obviously can charge super fast. I mean, you can charge to 100% at as little as 1.4 hours. When you consider how large the battery capacity is, that's great, because even if the power came on during an outage, for a brief period of time, you could very quickly charge this back up to where you could have some serious help. Or if you're driving, they do have, I believe now, a kind of a turbo unit that you can purchase as a separate accessory. But if you're someone who a lot of times you're going to be charging while driving through DC, it's a way that you can actually really get it to charge quickly under that circumstance. And it also charges fast via solar as well. So all of that is obviously very welcome. It does have the capacity to do the power lift up to 3,900 watts of draw, which means that, a lot of things tend to draw more power as they power up, and that's the reason for the power lift. And so if you're doing that, it means that it's going to have no problem as, sustaining it for a while, and then as those motors kind of get moving and they're drawing less current, then it's going to be able to handle that for an ongoing basis. It can basically power anything. So, that's fantastic. I appreciate the fact that it has got greater longevity, more charge cycles, newer battery technology. That's all great. I appreciate that all the plugs are 20 amp rather than 15 amp. That's awesome. As mentioned already, Bluetti's app control is great. I appreciate the awesome UPS options that we have got here. And I love the fact that we've got all of this. It's smaller, it's got better specs, it's got more power, it's got more battery capacity, and it's cheaper than the previous generation. So all of that adds up to great value. So how about some things that I don't like? I know I've been pretty positive at this point, but there are a few things that I want to continue to criticize in hopes that Bluetti will keep improving things. First of all is that, again, Units like this a lot of times are going to be used outdoors. I would love to see IP protection, an IP rating here that means that if it gets rained on, I'm not concerned about that. Maybe if I have it out charging via solar, which I like to do, and if all of a sudden there's a sudden rain squall, it probably will be okay, but I would feel a whole lot more secure if it had an IP rating. So that's something I'd like to see Bluetti do. I also would love, in a unit this powerful, I would love the ability to be able to bridge and get up to, something that's drawing at, instead of 120, drawing at 240. That would be, I think, a really, really useful thing. There are certain things that I would like to power during a power outage that would allow me to do that, which I can't right now with something like this. That's something I would like to see improved in a unit like this. I recognize this is more about portability than it is about being a home backup, but it's powerful enough to do a lot of home backup. So I'd like to see a few more features in that regard. But my list of critiques is really quite short, as you can see. My conclusion is this: the Elite 200 V2, it doesn't necessarily jump out at you because of some kind of killer feature. But as I noted in my intro, the longer I used it, the more impressed I was by it. It kind of sunk into me how great the specs were, how deep the battery capacity was, and frankly, just how well everything worked. The specs where it matters, the things that you actually need, are awesome on this, next level on it, even if the amount of ports and the variety of ports, and then there isn't some kind of other unique marketable feature. This is less about marketing and it's more about practicality. It just works, and it works extremely well. And I think that it's a strong value. Right now you can get it for around $900 US. That's an amazing price for all that this offers. And as noted, it's much better and it's cheaper than the previous generation. Canadian pricing is around 1,600 Canadian, and I don't find that that is as competitive in my mind. I've often noted with Bluetti, there's quite a disparity between what their US price is and their Canadian price is, so maybe add that to my critiques. I'd like the Canadian price to be a little bit more competitive on it. Maybe that will happen after it's been on the market for a little while. If you are looking for a practical unit that has more storage capacity and more power output than pretty much all the competition that you're going to get for this price, then I can easily recommend the Bluetti Elite 200 V2. If you want more information, you can check out everything that's in the description down below. There's also buying links there. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.